Hey, this is Andras with a quick little intro here. During this conversation with AJ Gonzalez, we refer to a book called Alternate Oscars by Danny Peary, one critic's defiant choice for Best Picture Actor and Actress from 1927 till its publishing in 1991. It's a great book. We talk about it a lot, but we don't explain what it is, and now I have.
Hi, I'm Brian.
And I'm AJ.
And we have a podcast called The Director's Wall,
examining a filmmaker's career, film by film. First up was M. Night Shyamalan, then Francis Ford Coppola. Who's next? Is there anything to this whole auteur theory? Find out on
The Director's Wall.
Subscribe via Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, or your preferred listening platform.
I'm Larry Bishop, and you're listening to the World is Wrong podcast.
We're here to tell you how the world is wrong. The world is wrong about
the Oscars.
Welcome to The World is Wrong, an extremely positive podcast where we celebrate films, film artists, and in some cases, film institutions that the world is wrong about. I am your host, Andras Jones, and we are joined by...
Not Brian Connolly, I'm sorry. I'm AJ Gonzalez.
He is AJ Gonzalez, and he is sorry, but I'm not, because AJ Gonzalez is an expert. If you listen to The Director's Wall, the podcast that you host with Brian Connolly, our beloved Brian Connolly, who can't be here with us, you are an Oscar expert, and we are here to explore the ways that the world is wrong about the Oscars, both pro and con, and there's nobody more qualified, so you have nothing to be sorry about.
Oh, that's it's quite the intro. I hope I live up to it.
Maybe it's unfair to say that there's nobody in the world who's more qualified. What I mean is there's nobody in our friend group, our little pod of casters, that is as much of an expert and as much of a champion of the Oscars as you are.
I do love the Oscars, and I will defend them. Though there is a lot of good about the Oscars and a lot of bad about the Oscars, and we'll get into both.
Yeah, so how about you give us a little background on your infatuation / obsession with the Academy Awards?
I have always loved movies since I was a kid. It was just like, I was the movie guy. Mostly because I told people I was the movie guy, but they went with me on that, and I thank everyone that I ever went to school with or that was friends with me. And so the Oscars were, when I was a kid, they were just this like weird thing that happened on TV, but I was also very into Siskel and Ebert, and I'd watch Siskel and Ebert, and then I'd watch the Oscars, and a lot of the titles they mentioned that to me were just like, what is, like, Secrets and Lies? I think I've heard that before. Or Il Postino, the Postman. I think Siskel and Ebert talked about that. And then it was kind of a thing I just casually watched as a kid. It was the Oscars, but it wasn't until I was in high school and got really into the behind the scenes of filmmaking, the writing, directing, cinematography, that I got like really interested in the Oscars. And as I got older, I was able to drive, so I could drive to the bigger movie theater in Corpus Christi, which was an hour away, but they played most of the movies, so I could actually watch all of the at least Best Picture nominees, most of the Oscar nominees, and so I had like this, I had more of an interest in it. And then I had that moment that we all have if you're, young and into awards, when you realize the awards, they're not always how they should be, not always based on merit. But I realized...
Really? Wait a second. Really? What? The Oscars? They don't always...
Political?
It's not always the best film that always wins?
Yeah.
Oh, and I mean internal... Sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And I mean internal Hollywood politics, not national capital politics. Um, but I still realize but the movies that I really liked for this year, we'll delve into that a little bit later probably. Like they were still nominated, they were still in there, they were still in the conversation, and it was still this night that celebrated movies, and it celebrated the the background of filmmaking. There's a lot of awards ceremonies, but not all of them have cinematography and editing and writing and sound editing and special effects, all these things that go into a movie. And there's this yearly televised celebration, the most watched live TV event after the Super Bowl, that celebrates film. And maybe the people watching, they're not into who wins sound, but they hear these titles, or foreign, now international feature, but they hear the titles, maybe it sticks in there. And so those films, they still get out there and into the consciousness. And it's to me, if you don't take the Oscars too seriously, and you should never take any awards body of any kind too seriously, the Oscars can be a lot of fun.
And that's the fact. They're fun. So leave them alone, or not. Why don't we get into talking about how the world is wrong about this ceremony that we both have fond and conflicted feelings for? Would you mind telling us, from the point of defending the Oscars and what's great about them, could you tell us how the world is wrong about the Academy Awards?
Sure. So there's, like we said, there's a lot of good about Oscars, a lot of bad about the Oscars. And talking about one usually leads to the other. But I want to start with, and I'm paraphrasing, the great Leonard Maltin, who staunchly repeats every year when people are upset that their favorite movie, their favorite performer did not get a nomination, did not get the recognition they feel they deserve, and so they were snubbed. This movie was snubbed, this person was snubbed, and it really feels like that. But what Uncle Maltin says, and we have to keep in mind, is that the Academy, the however many thousands of members there are, does not all gather together into a room and vote on these things. They don't all purposely gather together in a giant auditorium and say snub to this person or this movie. There is a lot of groupthink that goes on there, just from whatever best of the year lists have happened, any previous awards that it may have happened, and the film critics associations have already given out their awards by the time nominations happen. So there are in the air, and then of course studio campaigns, and we'll get into studio campaigns. But the whole idea that the Academy, as a whole, as one entity, will deign to snub someone or recognize, award someone, is something I really think a lot of people do get wrong about the Oscars. It's a whole bunch of disparate people with different tastes in movies, and they line up a lot of the time. But there's always some outliers, and that's how you get occasionally some really interesting nominees in there that maybe they don't have a chance of winning an actual Oscar at the ceremony, but they do sneak in there. Nightcrawler sneaks in there with one nomination, or sometimes because of the way they're trying to change the makeup of the awards body, more interesting nominees get in there in the director category now. And then of course last year we had the most interesting and most exciting Best Picture win in I don't know how long, Bong Joon-ho's Parasite, which is great last year.
Well, okay, so just I want to like hone in on particular points. So one of the ways that you feel like the world is wrong about the Oscars is that people feel like when their favorite thing or the thing that they think is best doesn't get nominated or does get nominated and then doesn't win, that it's a snub of that film as opposed to a process playing out that is not as personal as people make it.
Correct.
I think when people are like, fatalistic about the Oscars and the snubs, it's sort of like they're probably earlier in their process of acculturation to the Academy Awards. I feel like you sort of said it. Like if you're a fan of movies, first you discover the movies, then you discover the Academy Awards, which turns you on to more movies, and you start to think that that the Academy Awards are cool, and then you become smarter about movies than the Oscars are, and then you have this feeling of how dare they snub this and this and this, and then you get to a point where you're like, oh, it's not a snub. That's just the Oscars. They're never going to honor the best film of the year. That's just never going to happen. Like, even if it does, it'll be an accident. It's never going to happen. You're always going to look back and be like, yeah, my favorite film from that year was not that. I never want to watch that film again. I mean, I might be the only person who's watched Spotlight twice. No, have you?
Yeah, I've only seen it once. I mean, that's one of those movies that, like, it's rough to watch once. I mean, just because of the subject matter, it's excellently made.
I don't want to go too far down the road of Spotlight. My point was just that, like, that's the kind of movie that wins an Oscar, and it's not the kind of movie that people tend to, even if they were moved by it, go on feeling like these positive feelings for it, like they continue to do, or we continue to do with so many non-Oscar winners, from Citizen Kane to Pulp Fiction to, I don't know, what was my first, I was so depressed when Towering Inferno didn't win the Academy Award back in 1974, 75, was it? Like,
so that was 74. That was a good nominee year. That was the year I would have been excited to be watching the Oscars.
Oh yeah, like any of the films are better than Towering Inferno. What are the other films that were nominated that year?
I mean, maybe they come close to Towering Inferno, like Chinatown, Godfather 2, The Conversation, Lenny. Not a Best Picture nominee, but Day for Night was nominated for Best Director and Screenplay.
Yeah. Did Fred Astaire fall out of any of a building in any of those movies?
Yeah. And I don't mean to be like, I don't know if flippant's the right word, but because
you're right.
Towering Inferno's entertaining.
I'm sorry, of course. I used that. I set you up. That was my point, was to set you up to win this argument. That sometimes the Oscars get it right and we're wrong. But it just depends on where you are. For me, at that, like, I was like 5 or 6 years old. I was like, that was my first Oscars ceremony. I was like, what? What's this? Chinatown? Godfather? Who cares about? Ugh. Lenny, please. Come on. Paul Newman and Steve McQueen in a burning building? Jeez. Anyway, isn't John Wayne's kid in that movie too?
Everyone's in that movie.
Yes. So anyway, I guess I want to move through these points, but I guess one point of the way the world is wrong about the Oscars is in the way we get our feelings hurt as a personal affront when the films we like don't get chosen because of the system that exists.
Yes, absolutely.
So, what's another way that you feel like the world is wrong about the Oscars? Particular prejudices that you feel like people have about the Oscars that may not be valid.
So, for all of my like positives are going to have like, well, like maybe there's something bad to this.
It's okay. That's okay. You can still
are-
enjoy it.
For better or worse, the nominees, every nominee, not just the Best Picture nominees, are a snapshot of the time. They're a snapshot of where film was at that time. They're a snapshot of where the culture was at that time. And a lot of times we are, we as the culture are pretty self-aware, but there's also this other stuff going on that we don't want to admit to, and it kind of comes out in the list of Best Picture nominees, especially now, since they expanded the list to 10, and now between 5 and 10, but it's always like 8 or 9 because for some mathematical reason it can't actually be 10 again. I don't really understand why. I wish they would just do a solid 10. You're the Academy. You make the movies. Surely you can find 10 every year. I find 10 every year. Anywho,
The point here that you're trying to make is that that what's good about the Oscars is that it represents, regardless of whether or not you like the nominees from every year will represent something about that year and about that time. It's like an anthropological exercise. Right?
Yes.
Here, help me out with this. Take us back. Go
I
back
can
to
take you back.
1980s. Pick one from the 1980s that you feel like, or the 90s that you feel like really typifies this. Like you could look at it and say, okay, well, that is that year.
Actually, I could go back even further if you'd like.
Oh yeah, I'd love it. Time machine me, baby.
All right, so we can go back to 1967, and I mean the
Oh,
awards
yeah.
for the films released in the year of 1967, which is how I will be referring to the
They got it
the
wrong in
Oscars.
67 though too.
Yeah, they did. So the Best Picture nominees are In the Heat of the Night, the winner.
Can I tell you the other ones?
Please.
Bonnie and Clyde, The Graduate,
Mm-hmm.
Cool Hand Luke.
No.
Not
no.
nominated?
Not nominated for Best Picture.
Should have been. So Bonnie and Clyde, The Graduate. In the Heat of the Night. Shit. I used to know this. Okay, you do the other two.
Dr. Dolittle and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner.
Okay, yeah. Oh,
So now I was not around in 1967, but I did read Mark Harris's book Pictures At a Revolution, which is about this specific Oscar year, which is a wonderful book that I highly recommend if you're into film history, the Oscars, whatever. And the way this Best Picture lineup breaks down is it's 1967, late 60s, summer of love, all that. There's so much change going on in America and in the world, and it's reflected in the Best Picture nominees. All the stuff going on in the culture and all the stuff going on in the industry. And what Mark Harris points out is that you have two films that are done in the style of old Hollywood that are addressing the issues of new America, but done through the old Hollywood style.
In the Heat of the Night and Guess Who's Coming to Dinner.
You have two legitimate, full-on new Hollywood pictures. Like they've got a new approach to the subject matter, a new approach to filmmaking.
The Graduate and Bonnie and Clyde.
And you have one movie that's just in here because the studio bosses are like, we got to get a movie from our studio in here, so let's set up luncheons, let's set up screenings, we can buy people lunch, and we can get in there. That movie is Dr. Dolittle.
Got to do a lot for Dr. Dolittle to get a nomination. You got it.
Do a lot for Dolittle.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's one of those movies, like, my parents showed it to me, or grandparents showed it to me as a kid. I was not interested in it. Did not hold my attention. But yeah, it's still got a kind of a lot of nominations. 8 nominations. It actually won 2 for visual, one for visual effects, and the other for song score or adaptation score.
It was the Mank of its year.
It was. Oh yeah, we can talk about Mank.
Well, so let me just say, like going to Danny Peary, his choice is that Bonnie and Clyde should have won the Best Picture, which yes, it should have. But it also mentions here Chimes at Midnight, Falstaff from Orson Welles. That did not get a nomination that year and was probably one of the more important films that year, certainly more important than Dr. Dolittle. And then Point Blank from John Borman also came out that year. And so anyway, just to add a little bit to this anthropological research, that I think maybe the thing that's great about Danny Peary's book is it includes the snubs, which are also telling of the time, like the films that people get mad that they didn't get nominated from this standpoint are also valuable in terms of telling us about the culture at that time, right?
Yes, absolutely. And when you open it up, like one of my hobbies is I'll watch the Best Picture nominees of the classic era and review each of them for my blog, and then pick which one I thought should have won that year, but based just off of the nominees. And you're right, when you open it up to just the films that were out that year, and like, yeah, there's so many films every year that don't get any kind of Academy recognition that totally should, or they only get like the ancillary nominations, but they stick around in the conversation. And you're like, well, yeah, why wasn't Cool Hand Luke? Why didn't the Academy think that was one of the best movies of this year? Or Chimes at Midnight. I don't particularly care for Point Blank myself. I mean, Lee Marvin is very cool.
He's good.
He's
Okay,
good.
so now we have 2 points for the Oscars, How the World is Wrong. One is that they're valuable as a historical document in terms of telling us about ourselves as a culture.
Yep.
And
in 1967, we had 2 films dealing with race in a very kind of like old-fashioned kind of way. Like, hey, you know what? We can get along kind of thing. And then you had The Graduate and Bonnie and Clyde dealing with the youth and disillusionment, and how, like, you know what the older generation's offering me isn't for me. It's not right. The system is broken. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm going to strike out on my own. And Dr. Dolittle, the old-fashioned studio picture, like, hey, like, we'll buy you lunch if you give us nominees. That's my summary of 1967.
well, it's interesting because you're forcing me to reappraise that year in a way that I don't really 100% like, which is that, okay, well, so we have 2 films with white people missing the point on the civil rights conversation and centering themselves in it and sort of patting themselves on the back, and 2 about young white people and young white people's problems. And then we have this hippie doctor who talks to animals and focuses on saving the planet. Wait a second. Maybe the film that we should have been paying attention to all this time is Dr. Dolittle. That if we had been, so, okay, yeah, maybe Dr. Dolittle is like the Eugene McCarthy campaign. Anyway, okay, so I want to get through. And do you have any more like highlight? This is how the world, like, people judge the Oscars too harshly about this one thing, and I want to defend it or point that out. Anything else?
Those are like my strongest, most passionate points. There's other stuff that I'm confident will come up just kind of in our conversation, but those are the main ones I wanted to drive the front half of this podcast.
Okay. Well, then I have one of my own, one area where I feel like the world is wrong about the Oscars in a way that when something that's really good about them. And in my experience, whenever this happens, people complain about it. say, oh, this is the worst part about the Oscars. I don't want to hear that. And to me, it's when people who win the Oscars take that time to say incendiary or political things or make statements, particularly if it gets the audience booing them. Those to me are the high points of Oscardom. Like you said, it's the second most watched event in the world. And it's the one point when the artist class really gets to address the audience, because most of them aren't stand-up comedians. Most of them are actors, and they only really address the audience when they win an award or, or in character. So I have some favorites, and maybe we could just talk about a few of them. I'll just go through them here, and feel free to chime in. First of all, are you a fan of these exciting moments?
So I've mellowed on that over the years. At first, I was very against it, just rolling my eyes like, oh, it should be just about the movies, man. But over the years, as I've just kind of mellowed out in general on a lot of things, but I'm thinking if, it's your time, it's your moment up there, and if this is how you want to use it, then go for it, man. It's your 30 seconds or 60 seconds if you're a more famous person up there. And I'm thinking specifically of Joaquin Phoenix last year.
God, I'm full of so much gratitude right now. And I do not feel elevated above any of my fellow nominees or anyone in this room, because we share the same love, the love of film. And this form of expression has given me the most extraordinary life. I don't know what I'd be without it. But I think the greatest gift that it's given me, and many of us in this room, is the opportunity to use our voice for the voiceless. I've been thinking a lot about some of the distressing issues that we are facing collectively. And I think at times we feel, or we're made to feel, that we champion different causes. But for me, I see commonality. I think whether we're talking about gender inequality or racism or queer rights or indigenous rights or animal rights, we're talking about the fight against injustice. We're talking about the fight against the belief that one nation, one people, one race, one gender, or one species has the right to dominate, control, and use and exploit another with impunity. I think that we've become very disconnected from the natural world, and many of us, what we're guilty of is an egocentric worldview, the belief that we're the center of the universe. We go into the natural world and we plunder it for its resources. We feel entitled to artificially inseminate a cow, and when she gives birth, we steal her baby, even though her cries of anguish are unmistakable. And then we take her milk that's intended for a calf and we put it in our coffee and our cereal. And I think we fear the idea of personal change because we think that we have to sacrifice something to give something up. But human beings at our best are so inventive and creative and ingenious. And I think that when we use love and compassion as our guiding principles, we can create, develop, and implement systems of change that are beneficial to all sentient beings and to the environment. Now, I've been a scoundrel in my life. I've been selfish. I've been cruel at times, hard to work with, and ungrateful. But so many of you in this room have given me a second chance. And I think that's when we're at our best, when we support each other, not when we cancel each other out for past mistakes, but when we help each other to grow, when we educate each other, when we guide each other towards redemption. That is the best of humanity. I want to, when he was 17, my brother wrote this lyric. He said, "Run to the rescue with love and peace will follow." Thank you.
Well, when Joaquin Phoenix won for Joker, not the Joker, but just Joker, and his whole speech was about the veganism and about how animal agriculture is not good for animals in the world and everything. And it's a lot of stuff that I am, as a meat eater, am personally not in line with. I mean, he's got valid points, but most importantly, like, yeah, if that's what he wants to say, then go for it, man. Go ahead and say it. And then when you think how Joaquin Phoenix is a hippie kid that grew up on a commune, and this is what actually means something to him, and it's really obvious that awards and fame does not mean something to him. So he's got this moment where the industry is forcing him onto this stage to all right, here you go, we got the spotlights on you and all the cameras on you, and you're gonna be yourself. And he's like, well, then I'm going to talk about something I actually care about and not about this award and who my manager was and yada, yada, yada. So that one, it's odd because like I said, he has valid points. They don't speak to me personally, but yeah, I'm totally cool with him talking about proselytizing for veganism.
So, yeah, so you're not as much of a fan of these moments as I am, but you're no longer in the category of people who gets riled up about it.
No, I would not boo those moments anymore.
Yeah, I'm of the belief that a lack of politics is also political. So actors who never make a political statement, or artists who never make a political statement, are making a political statement if they are being silent about an injustice that they're aware of. Not that everyone can be loud about everything, but if you're never loud about anything and you have a lot of power, then, I guess I don't judge those people as harshly as I used to. But I consider them just as political as the people who are... I consider Tom Hanks to be just as political as Tim Robbins.
That's the person I was thinking of as you were talking about that. And
his
that
films,
position,
the stuff he produces is so political. It has such a point of view. It's just a point of view that is shared by a lot of people. And this is not a knock on him. It's just to say that he is political and Tim Robbins is political. And this is why I like these moments, because that's when it gets real. Because we are political. And if you're booing the person who's being political, that's political too. If you're telling them not to be political, that's extremely political, right?
You're totally right. That whole idea is a position I've warmed up to in recent years of my life, that everything is political, even being apolitical, even being charming star, male or female or whatever, that doesn't offend anyone. Even that in itself is political. And this movie doesn't say anything about politics, but it's still political then.
Right.
It still feeds into the culture and the times, and everything does. Everything does.
Especially based upon what your last point, which is these are cultural artifacts and they tell us about ourselves and about that time. So one of the things that they tell us is what they're leaving out. That's the main thing that things from the past usually tell us, is we look back and we're like, oh my God, how they're sleeping in separate beds, but they're married. That is weird. We watch that now and think that's just weird. And there are no black people in any of these films. Well, that's weird. And the women are all kind of less interesting unless they're hot than the men. That's weird. But at the time, it doesn't seem weird. And that's one of my reasons that I argue for films to be allowed to be wrong, because in that wrongness, it's that if it's honest, there's a revelation. But let's rather than me giving, I kind of think that wait till we get to the Oscars. My goal is to get the audience to boo at me like they did at Sacheen Littlefeather when she accepted the Oscar on behalf of Marlon Brando for The Godfather.
Accepting the award for Marlon Brando and The Godfather, Miss Sacheen Littlefeather.
Hello, my name is Sacheen Littlefeather. I'm Apache, and I'm president of the National Native American Affirmative Image Committee. I'm representing Marlon Brando this evening, and he has asked me to tell you in a very long speech, which I cannot share with you presently because of time, but I will be glad to share with the press afterwards, that he very regretfully cannot accept this very generous award. And the reasons for this being are the treatment of American Indians today by the film industry, and on television in movie reruns, and also with recent happenings at Wounded Knee. I beg at this time that I have not intruded upon this evening, and that we will, in the future, our hearts and our understandings will meet with love and generosity. Thank you on behalf of Marlon Brando.
You know, even something like in 1970, Patton won Best Picture and George C. Scott won Best Actor for Patton, but he did not attend the award. He did not outright refuse the award, I don't think technically, but he did not attend because he thought that like actors shouldn't compete, or it was a silly thing for, you know, one performance to be compared to another performance. And that, you know, is not like an overtly like, I am refusing this award because of the nation's treatment to indigenous peoples, but it like he's still saying something about the industry and the way people perceive the industry just by not showing up.
Yeah, I consider George C. Scott's turning down the Oscar I put in at number 2 on my list. I feel like Brando pointing our attention to Hollywood's treatment of the indigenous people of this nation and this continent is such I don't know, it's like one of the great things in film history that an actor who had earned that much integrity and that much capital chose that moment to focus on probably one of the most important things that film could focus on since it was born really through the genre of the Western. And so to me, that's the primo number one. People got so mad at him. He was entirely right. And, you know, I feel bad for Sacheen Littlefeather, but at the same time, I hope she feels proud, and I hope her family and the people who know her are proud that she had that moment in history. Bravo, Marlon Brando. I think it's great. George C. Scott is the next one, though, because for exactly a different reason, which is that his statement, it's a totally apolitical political statement, which is just like, it's almost like a pacifist statement. It's not like I oppose the Vietnam War, just I oppose war in general. I oppose this whole thing. I'm not going to fight with any of the other actors. And there's also, you know, it's like good, because I feel like George C. Scott could beat any other actor in an acting fight or just a fight. He could just eat them. Like even Marlon Brando, I don't know, Brando and yeah, those two guys doing a showdown. That's definitely something. But both of them big integrity kind of moves. You want to know what my third one on my list is?
What's your number 3?
Halle Berry turns down Adrian Brody. That kiss, I feel like that was its own sort of integrity turning point in the history of film. Different, totally, it was totally unplanned, but, oh, I mean, boy, her reaction to that kiss, our reaction to that kiss changed everything for Adrian Brody. That's for sure.
That's something that, like, I was 17, 18 when that happened. And it's something that I, like, only with maturity and with the times changing have I seen now in, like, a different way. Because he does that, and it's like, hey, when else am I ever going to get the chance to do this? And, it's just a kiss, like, no big deal, right? And then now, and then, like, that moment happens, I don't think about it, and you can tell Halle Berry's like, what the fuck? Like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah. It's...
And now someone on Twitter says, like, oh, like, remember that time, like, he, like, assaulted her after winning, Best Actor? I'm like, hey, he did... No, yeah, I think you're right. He did, like, uninvited...
If it had
unwelcome.
There's ways you could do it as a bit.
Absolutely.
I could see Tina Fey and Amy Poehler doing the exact same bit to parody this, and it would be fine. There's no assault there, right? But it happened right in front of everyone. It happened right in front of everyone in 2008.
Millions in front of the world. And to think, even in my at my high school, when the marching band, we won some kind of big award or whatever, and it was like everyone was really excited because it was our senior year, I guess. And one guy who, like, we were all casually friends, he didn't really know the person I'm referring to in this story, like, grabs her and does the, like, kissing the war goodbye VJ Day thing. But instead of actually kissing her, what he does is he puts his hand over her mouth and kisses the back of his hand, so he's not actually kissing her.
Yeah.
And then putting that in the context of the Adrian Brody moment, where this, like, 17-year-old kid wanted to do, like, a bit and was smart enough to know, like, I don't, like, she may not actually want me to kiss her in front of the entire marching band.
Right.
And so he, like, consciously made it obvious that he wasn't actually kissing her. Had more, like, more foresight than...
Well, I guess, but here's the thing. To me, it's not even... Yes, Adrian Brody overstepped. And Halle Berry's response was a totally natural response. And it all happened. It played out in real time. I don't particularly think that Adrian Brody is a villain or a victim. I feel
Absolutely.
like
I want to make that clear.
They're
too.
both. They just gave us a moment, an Oscar moment that one can be proud of, one can be embarrassed about, but that's the job as actors, is to act out real moments that reflect the audience's experience. And what happened in that moment is something that a lot of people, probably, no, I'm not going to say everyone, but millions of people, millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of people could relate to from multiple points of view. And those points of view have shifted, and we've had, and it's still, like I'm mentioning it to you, it's still a hot moment to think about, and how you have sort of trace your own evolution, and I trace my evolution to it, and the whole, maybe, and the Oscars in a way were not the same after that. Like, the Oscars, just like, that was a moment of, it was, and as far as moments, wake up call moments, it was pretty benign. Those both, they're both fine. Halle Berry and Adrian Brody don't need our sympathy, but I think they need our praise. Like, that's a big, like, good job on both of you for letting the cat out of the bag, that there's something going on here that's not okay, and we just take it for granted. But when it happens right in front of everyone, it's like, someone who's used to getting away with racial slurs lets one slip in the wrong company, and everyone's like, what? And it's like, oh yeah, you talk like that all the time. Oh no, you're right. So I want to keep plowing through these.
Cool.
So unless I'm cutting you off, I don't want to cut you off.
No.
No, those were all great, but the one probably my personal favorite was Michael Moore getting booed at the Oscars in 2003 for speaking out against George W. Bush.
On behalf of our producers, Kathleen Glynn and Michael Donovan from Canada, I'd like to thank the Academy for this. I've invited my fellow documentary nominees on the stage with us, and we would like to. They are here in solidarity with me because we like nonfiction. We like nonfiction, and we live in fictitious times. We live in a time where we have fictitious election results that elects a fictitious president. We live in a time where we have a man sending us to war for fictitious reasons, whether it's the fictition of duct tape or the fictitious of orange alerts. We are against this war, Mr. Bush. Shame on you, Mr. Bush. Shame on you. And anytime you've got the Pope and the Dixie Chicks against you, your time is up. Thank you very much.
But that sort of like Brando, like he was right. The audience that was booing him was wrong, and he was in exactly the right position to make that particular statement. He had made a film about this. He was accepting the Oscar for this film. Of course he's going to talk about it. The fact that they booed him, again, it reveals a lot about the prejudice of that time, and just maybe the prejudice of any time. Like, we should all be sort of a little bit aware of, do we want to be the audience that's booing the guy who's right and being willing to say it? So I don't know. Do you have a feeling about that one?
Yeah, when I think about like the ones that like I roll my eyes at, or like I'm like that. The Michael Moore moment was the particular one. Now, in general, I'm not a Michael Moore fan. I just find him abrasive and obnoxious, and that's kind of his, like, the thing he has embraced, as a means of tackling down the big subjects he's going after. So yeah, I did not like that moment when it happened. The thing I really didn't like, and I mean, who knows about the behind the scenes or whatever, but the thing I did not like was that he invited all the fellow documentary nominees up on stage with him, and he's like, "We tell real stories because we live in fake times." And I just wonder, one, it presumes that he knew he was going to win, which, I mean, fair enough. He's the most famous documentarian of that group. But I get where do we know? I mean, yeah, I could call up all the other documentary makers and find out if they knew, and they were okay with it.
Wait, hold on a second. I can't tell you how many times I've had to be in a room where someone's playing the national anthem, and I have to decide, am I going to stand or not stand or take, we're constantly being put in those positions. I will just say, asking Michael Moore not to be political in that moment is like asking Zac Efron to not be cute in his moment. It's his brand. He is I get it if you get, I'm defending these. I like these moments. But when someone who is obviously political wins for a political thing and then they make a political statement, I feel like you may not like him. He is abrasive. You always are seen as abrasive if you're the one who's always bringing up the stuff that nobody wants to talk about. And in this case, he was a winner about a film, about a topic that he made a point about, and his point was proven out. So, you can certainly, everyone can be annoyed at him. You can be annoyed at anyone, but just from a sort of on-brand thing, you can imagine how it would have been much worse for the people who like Michael Moore if he had got up and just said, "I want to thank my agents. I want to thank all the cool people at this thing. God bless the troops." that wouldn't have worked.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I agree with you, and I agree like deep down with like Michael Moore's sentiments, but I mean, like, yeah, at the time I was not
Yeah, I
on
know.
board.
You love the
on
Oscars.
board with it.
This is your party that you've been waiting all year for, and then here comes Michael Moore trying to turn it into a political event. To me, that's I'm the opposite. I'm like, I'm looking for a political event. I want there to be someone like an activist thing that gets crashed into every Oscars. You know, that's my idea. That's what I'm waiting for. Like maybe, and you know, it's like the guy who shows up at NASCAR waiting for the car crash, I guess. Except I'm not waiting for anyone to get killed, you know. But I'm just saying, I can see how we're at odds because you want the party to go off well, and I'm waiting for someone to show up and get drunk and put on a lampshade and start shooting their mouth off.
Yeah, though I do have to say, like over time, like having seen at that time, I hadn't seen. I knew who Michael Moore was. Maybe I had seen something else of his. I hadn't seen Roger and Me, and like after that, I saw some of his movies. But anyway, I've more come around to like, well, yeah, if you give Michael Moore a microphone, it doesn't matter what situation it is, whether it's at the Oscars or he's just in that plaza in front of the Alamo where everyone just like shouts whatever they want to about whatever they believe in. He's going to shout about whatever he believes in and is passionate about. Like, you gave him a microphone. Like, this is on you. And then there's that whole part of the Academy of the broadcast where it's like, we don't want these kind of moments, but really we kind of do because they're exciting and people watch for them. But no, but we don't. But we don't.
That's why, yeah, it's. By the way, I've never been invited to I've been in Hollywood in and around Hollywood. I've never been invited to the Oscars. So
I've entered a few contests, but never won.
I don't hold it against them. I do not hold that against them. I mean, if they do, it's just going to be a lot of work. I'll have to dress up, which brings me to one of my favorite things that was just like we make a big deal that George C. Scott refused to attend when he was nominated. I like that Woody Allen never attended. He did not attend forever. He only participated once after 9/11 when there was a tribute to New York City. But I think it's funny because in recent years there was a whole thing of people calling for him to be kicked out of the Academy, that Woody Allen should be kicked out of the Academy. Woody Allen should be kicked out of the Academy. There's all these petitions, kick Woody Allen out of the Academy. And I have a friend, I'm friends with Robert Whitey, one of the, someone who did the filmmaker. He was one of the original directors and creators of Curb Your Enthusiasm, and he's done a lot of really great documentaries on comedians like the Marx Brothers and Lenny Bruce. That was the thing I worked on with him. But he also did a Woody Allen documentary, and he was like, you know, Woody's never been a member of the Academy. He would never join such a thing.
Would never be the Groucho Marx things that he says so much. People think it's his, but he steals from Groucho Marx. I'd never be a member of a party that would have me.
Oh, well, that's what he said. I mean, he credits it to Groucho Marx, and I think it's in Annie Hall.
The other important joke for me is one that's usually attributed to Groucho Marx, but I think it appears originally in Freud's Wit and its Relation to the Unconscious. And it goes like this, I'm paraphrasing. I would never want to belong to any club that would have someone like me for a member. That's the key joke of my adult life in terms of my relationships with women.
So that's one of my favorites, just in general, just people who have
he's always working on the next movie. Like he didn't attend. Sometimes if you look on the awards tab on IMDb, if you click on the movie, there'll be a little like footnotes on like why someone didn't attend. Like Al Pacino did not attend the 1972 Oscars out of protest because he was nominated in supporting actor, but he thought he should have been nominated in lead. And he's right on that. The Marlon Brando's not in The Godfather as much as you think he is. But so, Woody Allen's never attended. And if there was a parentheses on all the awards he didn't attend, it would be like he was working on the next movie or he was playing with his jazz band. He didn't really care. Like you gave him the award for like Best Picture in '77 over Star Wars and like all these screenwriting awards. And he's like, whatever. Like, yeah, whatever. Like it's awards for for this, like, okay, I'm going to keep doing that. I don't care. I'm going to keep working.
Yeah. I think a healthy, not to say that there isn't value in the Oscars if that's what motivates you, but I also think that there's something about saying, that's not why I do this. And it's one thing for you or I to look at the Oscars and say, oh, that's like, it's good, it's bad, but it doesn't affect me. And saying, okay, I'm going to devote my next 3 months or 6 months as an extremely sensitive person to caring about this thing, or pretending to care about this thing, and going through all the motions that it takes to make people feel like you care about this thing, when that's not what motivates me at all. And I have better things to do. And then people might think that's an arrogant way of thinking, but it's more just, to me, it's just the sense of having good boundaries. On another side, this is one that I'm very conflicted about, is the Ilya Kazan, when he was given a Lifetime Achievement Award in 1999, and many actors refused to stand for him because he testified before the House Un-American Activities Committee against friends and colleagues, outing them, or at least affirming that they had been members of the Communist Party and affecting careers and sort of saving his own neck.
This year, the Academy's Board of Governors presents its honorary Oscar to a man whose work is vitally important in the history of American film. He was the master of a new kind of psychological and behavioral truth in acting. The work that he did and the actors he used brought a thrilling new reality to the stage and screen. More than anybody, he inspired us. He taught us a new respect for ourselves as actors and the potential power of our profession.
The passion of his performers matched his passion to explore the suppressed but raging discontents of our civilization. At a time when the prevailing American voice was bland and glib, this poetic realist, this angry romantic, always spoke fervently to our most basic conflicts between races and religions, classes and generations, men and women. Here are just a few moments, both heated and tender, from the lifelong lover's quarrel conducted with his adopted country by a ferociously gifted immigrant named Elia Kazan.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Elia Kazan.
In this clip, you could see that stars like Warren Beatty, Helen Hunt, and Meryl Streep are standing and applauding. Steven Spielberg is remaining seated while still applauding. And actors like Nick Nolte, Ed Harris, and Amy Madigan are making a point of staying in their seats and not applauding.
I thank you very much. I really like to hear that. And I want to thank the Academy for its courage, generosity, and I want to tell you that I've been a member of the Academy on and off for I don't know how many years. So I'm pleased to say what's best about them. They're damn good to work with. I also want to thank Marty. Where are you? Hiding behind me? Come on here.
Right behind me.
Where's Marty?
Right here. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Bob. And Bob, too.
And Bobby. Bobby De Niro. Okay. Okay, thank you all very much. I think I can just slip away.
That's an area. Actually, we're going to be doing an episode about The Front, the film The Front, in I guess a month or so, maybe a little bit more, and we'll be getting into that more, into that chapter of American history. But that's a complicated one for me. I believe in forgiving people, but I also, it's hard to forgive people who demanded that other people be held accountable. That's like, I always have like on a human to human level, I think it's a good thing to forgive, but also sort of on an artist to artist level, I think it's good to have some standards and sort of set a standard and say, hey, you know what? Integrity has a value and success does too. And if you have to choose between one or the other, how do you want to be remembered when you do that anthropological research into 1999 and who forgave Elia Kazan and who sat and refused to forgive him, and maybe learn about that history? And it's not really about those people, but that there's a part of me and part of us, of each of us, that like part of us is forgiving him and part of us is also sitting and saying, no way, man, that's a bridge too far. But do you have a memory of that, those Oscars?
I do not. 99 was still when I was only like casually into the Oscars, and I'm going to bet, yeah, in 99 I was 14, 15. I did not know who Elia Kazan was. I like knew Streetcar Named Desire as a title, but like I had never seen it. And I vaguely knew what the Blacklist was, and then like, you know, unfortunately got to know more and more about the Blacklist as you're like, oh, film history. I love film history. Like, oh, the 50s. Everything was great in the 50s.
No.
Oh, what? Oh, what? I wouldn't have been allowed in the movie theater in my town.
Yeah. Yeah.
As my last name might give away, I am quite brown. So yeah, my aunt told me, like, yeah, there were two movie theaters in my hometown. One was for like the white people and one was for the Mexicans. And then the Mexican one closed down. And then after that, the Mexican people just couldn't go see movies after that until, you know, the late 60s, early 70s. So yeah, 50s would not have been fun.
No. Yeah,
no,
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, and the whole Blacklist thing, it just, I mean, the only good that could come out of it is just forcing, I mean, the only good that could come out of it now is forcing you as an individual to think like, but what really would you have done? Like, and if you were faced with this now, what would you do? Because, yeah, we all think like, of course, I'm going to be Gary Cooper in High Noon and stand my ground, even though everyone deserts me, and, you know, and I'm going to pull this thing off. But then when it's really happening to you, who knows? You know, who knows? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. Maybe you're like, oh, what? No, but not me. Someone else. I'll support someone else standing their ground, but not me. Yeah, the whole 1950s HUAC Blacklist thing really sucks. I mean, that's like the lightest way to put it.
Yeah,
I don't mean to like belittle it, but
no, and I think we do face it. I think we do face it in a lot of ways. Like, it's sort of like, it's like the Me Too thing. It's like, I lived in Hollywood and worked in Hollywood in the 80s and 90s. And Brian and I have both talked about this, how we both, being from Olympia and being moderately well raised in terms of not being, I don't know, the worst kind of sexist predators and demeaning jackasses, that we both have had experiences where we encountered something and we recoiled, and, you know, maybe we didn't find our way in Hollywood in certain ways that we might have if we had been able to laugh at certain jokes or engage in certain behavior. But there's also, I'm sure there's different stuff that we both have walked past, and maybe we all have walked past. And it's like, okay, well, that now, you know, and we can go back and look, okay, did I stand up to predatory behavior? Did I stand up to, you know, that's what the anti-communism thing was. And even more recently, there's a lot of people who will say that someone's a Russian agent, accuse people of being a Russian agent when they just disagree with them politically. Or there's lots of ways. That the HUAC lesson is still floating in the air. There's plenty of opportunities. But I don't want to drag you into that. We'll get into that on the episode about the front. But on the same topic, like more divisive stuff, there's Vanessa Redgrave. I think it was in 1977 or 78.
My dear colleagues, I thank you very, very much for this tribute to my work. I think that Jane Fonda and I have done the best work of our lives. And I think this was in part due to our director, Fred Zinnemann. And I also think it's in part because we believed and we believe in what we were expressing. 2 out of millions who gave their lives and were prepared to sacrifice everything in the fight against fascist and racist Nazi Germany. And I salute you, and I pay tribute to you, and I think you should be very proud that in the last few weeks you've stood firm, and you have refused to be intimidated by the threats of a small bunch of Zionist hoodlums whose behavior is an insult to the stature of Jews all over the world and to their great and heroic record of struggle against fascism and oppression. And I salute that record, and I salute all of you for having stood firm and dealt a final blow against that period when Nixon and McCarthy launched a worldwide witch hunt against those who tried to express in their lives and their work the truth that they believed in. I salute you, and I thank you, and I pledge to you that I will continue to fight against anti-Semitism and fascism. Thank you.
I remember at the time reading about how she made this anti-Semitic statement at the Oscars, which when I saw it, I didn't understand. I didn't know any of that history. I was very young. But in time, I've gone back and looked at it, and she's like, no, she made a statement against prejudice and militarism. And again, people booed and got mad. So it goes on my list of great moments. So good for you, Vanessa. Do you have any memory of that one?
I do not. I think I know about it historically, and you're right, it is 77.
And then there was the one that everyone got really mad about that I remember, which was 1993, which was the year where Susan Sarandon and Tim Robbins and Richard Gere all made political statements, and the Hollywood press and just press in general did a massive universal eye roll over it. And I remember that I think that was the moment when I decided that these were my favorite moments in Oscar ceremonies, because I really don't have much of an affinity for Richard Gere, but I've been reading that he actually got banned from the Oscars for doing
I had a thought about something actually before I come in. I want to share it with you. It's going to be short, but I was really struck by this idea that there were 1 billion people watching this thing. It's astonishing. 1 billion people watching. I was curious about what countries this was actually going to, and it is in fact being seen in China right now. And the first thought that came to me was, I wonder if Deng Xiaoping is actually watching this right now with his children and his grandchildren, and with the knowledge that what a horrendous human rights situation there is in China, not only towards their own people, but to Tibet as well. And I was wondering if this kind of, if something miraculous and really kind of movie-like could happen here, where we could all kind of send love and truth and kind of sanity to Deng Xiaoping right now in Beijing, that he will take his troops and take the Chinese away from Tibet and allow these people to live as free, independent people again. So, thought. We send this thought. Send this thought out. Send this thought. Anyhow, art direction demands taste, talent, and the diplomacy to convince producers that they also have taste and talent.
Which, to me, banning someone from the Oscars for making a political statement is way more political than any political statement you could possibly make. I mean, if someone got up and literally just said, vote for so-and-so, that's still not as political as being like, nope, You talked about Tibet. How dare you? How dare
That makes
you?
Richard Gere kind of cool. I never thought Richard Gere would be kind of cool.
Yeah. And fans of the show know how much we love Tim Robbins and feel like he should be making a lot more movies, but not giving someone the money to make movies after they made 3 pretty perfect ones is another kind of politics that's why when these political moments happen at the Oscars, I get so excited. So I have one more, but are there any that you feel like I've missed?
There's not. I don't know if I don't want to step on your last one. The only ones I remember are in the early 2000s, around 2003, because that's when the second Iraq War started, whatever we want to call it. At Vulcan Video, we just called it the War on Terror. In our nonfiction section, our documentaries, we had World War I, World War II, Korean War, Vietnam, Gulf War, War on Terror.
Endless War. The Endless American War. Yeah.
Yeah. Where
it's so political, such a political statement there. You guys, you're going to get booed at the Oscars.
Yeah, subtle. Like, yeah, we're digging in there. Like, wait a minute. Like, all the wars end at the War on Terror, and that section just kind of goes on and on. Tim Robbins, when he wins supporting actor for Mystic River, and in like 2003, and when Chris Cooper wins in 2002, but by the time he won, it was 2003, and we had invaded. They both, I was expecting big statements from both of them, and they both just said kind of like support the troops, let's get our boys home, we don't need to be doing this, let's get our troops home. And boo, I was boo. Oh, I don't know. Do I not remember that correctly?
No, I was just being the audience booing them for not being political enough.
Okay, cool. Boo. And that's how I thought at the time. I thought the opposite of that. I thought they were going to get up there and make big stinks and ruin my movie party night. But they just said these kind of nice, weak, respect to both of them, because they are very political people, but weak things in their moments,
Well, that's Tim Robbins got massively shamed in 1993 around this. You learn that's part of the process. That's, again, why I feel also like I want to celebrate these moments, because the people who have these moments, they hear a lot more of the criticism than the support. That's for sure. Except maybe for this guy. To me, his existence has become a political statement at the Oscars. Do you know where I'm going here?
No, please tell me.
Spike Lee. Spike Lee He is more powerful than the Oscars. The Oscars exist as a snub to him, which has made him a snub to them. To me, that's I love that Spike Lee is a walking protest against the Oscars and he has every right. Driving Miss Daisy is we'll get into it, but sometimes winning the Oscar is way better for the person who loses the Oscar and way worse for who wins it. And I have a whole thing on that. But to me, ever since then, every Spike Lee film is in its own way better than whatever won the Oscar. And not just because that's it's his brand now. And it's because the Oscars picked the fight with him. I'm sure that he would love to have been honored instead of made into a perfect example of, just sort of hey, if you want to complain about the Oscars, who you could talk to? Talk to Spike Lee.
Spike Lee is someone, you're right. Controversial. I mean, he's a controversial figure only because of the way people react to him, because he's just saying what he sees. And when Spike Lee wins the adapted screenplay Oscar for Black Klansman, which he shares with the other writers, he's enjoying the moment, and someone asks him like, oh, like, you know, you won this, but Green Book won Best Picture, what do you think? And he laughs and says,
I'm snake bit. I mean, every time somebody's driving somebody, I lose.
And he like jumps. He kind of like does a jump as he says the punchline. And I mean, you can tell, like, dude just won an award, whether it means something to him long term or not, like, whatever. But he's just living this moment. His movie, his important, really important movie, is like in the conversation. And yeah, like in that moment of like, yeah, like, I love that Spike Lee.
Okay, so now we're gonna switch things around, and we're gonna start focusing on how the world is wrong about the Oscars from the standpoint of the world thinks these things are great about the Oscars, and they're not so great. And AJ, you have sort of some, as you say, bullet points that you're now going to unload into the body of the Academy Awards. Lay them on us.
Cool. So I'll go through these like a guy on a speed bag, like a boxer on a speed bag, because a lot of these, if you watch the Oscars, you probably have them yourself. And then we can expand on the ones that are really important. So it's usually unsurprising whichever movie or person wins the Oscar, because by this point, there's been so many other awards that it's really clear who's going to win. My second point is career Oscars. The Academy trying to make up for overlooking someone for their whole career. Now we're going to give it to someone for X movie. It doesn't matter what the movie is or what the performance is. We're going to give them the award of the Oscars every year. And yeah, I hate it as much as you do. The Oscars desperately try to be relevant, and they rarely succeed. The telecast, the actual broadcast, is obsessed with appealing to people that do not want to watch it and never will. I personally don't like it when, well, it's what it is. But lately, though, I guess it's something that the Academy has always done, is spreading the love. So, like, each nominated film, like, will get an award for something, just to make sure every film, like, well, you didn't win Best Picture, but you won Best Supporting Actor, you know. And then, so, like, each film gets a different award just to spread it around. The one thing, I think this will be just interesting to know, that the Academy began in the late 1920s as a means for the major studios, Paramount, MGM, Fox, and RKO, to stop their workers from unionizing, to stop the actors from forming a union, the cinematographers, the directors, the writers. The whole idea of the Academy was, hey, you don't need to form unions. There's the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences. So if you have a problem, come to us and we'll solve it. Don't form a union. Don't ever do that. Just come to the Academy and we will solve your problems. And also, we'll give out these awards too, because we really like you guys. Like, we really appreciate what you guys do. So it's really interesting to learn that. To keep in mind, that's how the Academy and the Oscars were born into this world.
Unsurprising. And I believe covered in one of Brian's favorite films, Sunset, from Blake Edwards, starring James Garner, Bruce Willis, and Malcolm McDowell. And I believe that that focuses on the first Oscars and some of its nefarious beginnings. So
I'm not aware of that film. But
do you know this guy, Brian Connolly? Have you met him before? You know, have you managed to have
a couple times?
And he's never talked with you about Blake Edwards?
Well, we've talked about Blake Edwards.
Well, I can't believe he didn't get as far as Sunset. That seems like one of his favorite topics. That and maybe Blind Date. I don't know. Anyway, okay, Bullet, keep pounding the sack, man. What else? I think you're onto this one with this one. Is like, oh, the people think the Oscars is there to celebrate film, but it's actually to control the workforce. Yeah. So that's a very interesting insight. So keep going.
The other one I have on here is Oscar campaigns.
They're great, or like the world loves them, but you think they're bad?
I actually think both. Like, I think they're bad, right? Like, because I mean, in the perfect world, right? Like, whatever's good would just, people would recognize it as good and such. But the whole Oscar campaign for a movie or a person is kind of what drives this whole Oscar fever. And sometimes they pan out and sometimes they don't. And sometimes they end up being embarrassing, and that's kind of fun. But I mean, for the viewer, for the audience, not for the person. But it's what really drives the modern Oscars. Though campaigns, like occasionally an actor would decide, like, the studio's not going to push me for an Oscar, so I'm just going to do it myself. I'm going to take out ads for me, and I'm going to go to all these luncheons and meetings and try to convince people to vote for me. And then the way we think of the Oscars as like studios wheeling and dealing and holding fabulous luncheons with a screening attached to it, and like, hey, you watched my movie, I bought you lunch, now vote for my movie. Unfortunately, if we're gonna have to talk about Harvey Weinstein really made the modern Oscars what it was. Just like, if I spend a lot of money, then people will vote for my movie, and that, in itself is not a glorious thing, and especially not from Harvey Weinstein. And if you have paid attention to films for the past 20 years, you know what a big figure Harvey Weinstein is, the head of Miramax and then the Weinstein Company, and now he's in prison. Rightfully so. But even before all the criminal stuff came out about him, even when it was just little like 13-year-old AJ watching the series Action starring Jay Moore, which is about, he played a Hollywood producer, and then he has to have a meeting with
Ileana Douglas, I believe, right? She was
with Ileana Douglas, and the final episode of that show is he can only get a movie produced if Ileana Douglas, she plays a former child star that has fallen on hard times, become a sex worker, and then she becomes his like right-hand man, Girl Friday type. And there are these two fat, obnoxious movie producers that will produce his new movie if Jay Moore agrees to let them have their way with Ileana Douglas. And he's in such a desperate position that he agrees to it. And Ileana Douglas says, I'll do this, but then we're done. We're done after this. I'm not in your life anymore. And then that happens, and that's the end of the series. It's a comedy series.
Yeah, I remember it.
With this great dark ending. And I watched it, and I was thinking, like, I know nothing about Hollywood, but I'm pretty sure those are supposed to be the Weinstein brothers. Not good people. Not good people.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Oscar campaigns.
Yeah, Oscar campaigns. So not good, but then they are also kind of fun. Just watching the ride, like an Oscar, like a movie gets a little bit of buzz, and so a studio will put money into it. And let's see where it goes. Does it build up something? Does it somehow get a best picture, best actor nominee? And it's what really drives the. I mean, if you're into the Oscars, it what drives the the buzz, the fever. So where those campaigns start, not always good.
I got my take on that, but just keep pounding the bag, man. What else you got for me?
So,
Oscars on the ropes. Boom, boom. One more. Come on.
Okay, so some of the Academy members occasionally, well, every year, there's always a publication of an honest Oscar ballot where they interview a voting member of the Academy anonymously, and then here's what they actually think. And those people always not only hate the nominated movies, but seem to actively hate movies. Like the most recent one I remember, it's like, oh, I'm not going to vote for Eddie Murphy for Dolomite is my name. He wants it too much. Like, are you kidding? Like, every actor wants it too much.
Except George C. Scott and Marlon Brando.
Yeah, except them.
And Woody Allen, I guess. Yeah.
It's like another honest Oscar ballot said like, oh, like Roma, that just looks like a home. That looks like a home movie. Like, it looks boring. Like, I could have shot that. Now, Green Book, that's the kind of movie. And then that person went on and on about Green Book. Yeah. And so the Academy is populated with those people. And I mean, maybe the Academy has, like, once you are in it, you can stay in it, though they're kind of changing the rules now. So it's hard to tell. Maybe that person is an outlier, or maybe that was a famous person that is anonymous. You don't know. It just really makes the Academy seem out of touch, and then a lot of times with the choices with who they actually vote for also seems out of touch. Sometimes interesting nominees will get in there, like unfortunately I'll go back to 2018, like Black Klansman, Black Panther gets in there, but then Green Book is the winner. But you guys were almost there. You were almost interesting and exciting.
Okay, so the Academy has at least some anonymous idiots in it, and it seems like the quality control over the voting group is maybe not as high as it ought to be. Okay.
No.
Anything else? What else? Hit the body.
That's what I've got. I think you might have some an interesting point.
Well, I have one more, but let's dig into some of these first. So just like to working backwards. I'm sorry. I have. There was a time when I used to believe in journalistic integrity in actual news, let alone in entertainment news. But those days are long gone. So when someone tells me that they have an anonymous source that they're trotting out this stuff, maybe they do, maybe they just made it up. I don't know. It's like even if it is just one thing, like they could have interviewed 20 people who had said very intelligent things, but this is the clickbaity thing. So while I think the evidence it suggests that your analysis is correct, I'm always dubious of man on the street interviews clipped out. Like, we asked these people if they knew where Alaska was, and then you just show the 3 people who don't know where Alaska is, and it's like, people are so stupid. Like, maybe they are, maybe they aren't. You certainly are focusing on the stupid, but the results suggest that your analysis is correct. Just those kind of stories, I would encourage people to be, maybe they heard maybe they have an anonymous source, and maybe they just have an imaginary friend. Just saying. What were some of the others? What were the first couple on your list?
That the winners are not surprising.
Yeah,
because there are so many other awards like Golden Globes, SAG, BAFTA.
I guess that's probably why it's that's to be expected. If it was surprising every time, then it wouldn't be surprising. The fact that it's surprising ever, I think, is probably, maybe that's the world is wrong in thinking that the Oscars are bad, that they're not surprising. But in fact, there are enough surprises.
That's true. And I mean, honestly, the surprises, they have to be few and far between. Otherwise, they won't be surprises. If you don't know what is really going to win every year. Like this year, it seems like the winner is kind of already solidified. Like last year, it seemed like, okay, like I guess it's going to be 1917, and I was okay with that. I thought 1917 was better than a lot of people I thought were giving it credit for. But then it turns out to be what? Parasite. That is so amazing and unexpected. And like, well, it got nominated for Best Foreign Film, Best International Film, and Best Picture. So it's going to win Best International, and then it's not going to win Best Picture because that's how that works. But then it won both. It's crazy.
So that's, yes, there's that. But also, don't you just feel like, well, now that you are one of our Oscars nominators, that when the Oscar nominees are announced, wouldn't it be annoying if one of the films that you want to be able to celebrate on the Oscars ceremony actually got some little technical nomination, and so they got disqualified from the Oscars?
Yeah, you're right about that, and that actually has happened. There's a film or two I won't be able to nominate for an Oscar because it got like an ancillary below the line Oscar nomination, which like I should have seen coming. There was a period piece and it got nominated for costumes. So like,
yeah, The Five Bloods, they got one nomination. It sucks because that's double snub for Spike Lee.
Yeah.
Damn. So so I do have one more of mine that I sort of alluded to it in my last talking about, just the value of winning an Oscar. And I think this is the main thing, that every young actor, I don't want to say most young actors at some point imagined their Oscar speech, imagine winning an Oscar. And maybe directors, screenwriters, maybe everyone in the film business does. And this is where I feel like the world is wrong about the Oscars, is that winning an Oscar is not something that anyone should aspire to. This is, as I said in my celebration of Oscars political moments, the best thing you can do when you win an Oscar is to famously turn it down. You can just go through anyone who says anything interesting ends up being sort of a punchline. Sally Field, you won 2 Oscars, and all you get out of it is being somebody's punchline.
I owe a lot to my family for holding me together and loving me and having patience with this obsession of me. But I want to say thank you to you. I haven't had an orthodox career, and I've wanted more than anything to have your respect. The first time I didn't feel it, but this time I feel it, and I can't deny the fact that you like me. Right now, you like me.
You know what? I really like you, and there's nothing funny about that. If you're listening, Sally, because I know you're a big fan. It's not fair that she became a punchline for saying, whatever. It's embarrassing. It's just you don't want to put yourself in that situation. Actors are sensitive people. You don't want to be up on that stage at that moment trying to figure out how to thank everyone you need to thank, not say something embarrassing, make the most of your moment, honor the film that you were in and the spirit of the way people think about you. It's a nightmare. Stay away. Do like George C. Scott and Woody Allen. Just be, just focus on your art. And we can just get like Green Book is a perfect example. I'm glad you keep bringing it up, because I feel like, now, I don't like Pete Farrelly. I don't like the Farrelly brothers films in general. I've always been not a fan. Always been not a fan. I've never been a fan. I remember the first movie that I ever wanted to walk out of, I don't know if I actually did, was Dumb and Dumber.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's like their good one.
No,
their best one.
The Farrelly brothers feel like they're smart people who think I'm dumb, making jokes at me as if I think those things are funny when I don't. That's my own take. My point is I have the opposite of affinity for the Farrelly brothers. So this defense of Green Book does not come from any loyalty to that, or even a feeling that Green Book is a great movie. It's a very well acted kind of movie that shows on, in the afternoon on some TV channel, and it probably shouldn't have been nominated for an Oscar in the first place. That came out of campaigning. It came out of the two actors who are in it, who are, sort of perennial or have been perennial Oscar nominees, Viggo Mortensen and Mahershala Ali. And so the momentum of the Oscars just drew it towards it. And of course people campaign. Like you're right, it shouldn't have been nominated. But it was, and it was not good for it. And I think that in the long run, people may go back and look at Green Book and be like, why was everyone so mad at this film? Because out of the context of Black Klansman totally should have won the Best Picture that year. But that's the Academy's fault, not Green Book's fault. Or it's not Green Book's fault any more than it's Spike Lee's fault. That's why I'm sure someone like George C. Scott was like, this is a fucked up, toxic thing. I'm supposed to campaign against Marlon Brando? Marlon Brando's fucking awesome. Why would I campaign against him? When it comes to whether or not winning an Oscar is a good thing, I think there are enough cases of it either having a negative effect on your career or in terms of sour grapes, people resenting you, not because of anything you did, but because they wanted something else to win. And
absolutely, like Adrian Brody is someone that we mentioned before who won Best Actor.
If he hadn't won Best Actor, he would never have been on that stage and sexually assaulted Halle Berry in front of the whole... He would have done that in private. No, I'm sorry. No, it's good. It's good. In that case, that might be... Anyway, go on. Make your case.
All jokes. And then, Halle Berry wins for Monsters Ball, and then her career... afterwards, there's a joke that there's a Best Actress curse. If you win Best Actress, then you're gonna make terrible movies afterwards. And Halle Berry is held up as an example of that. She wins Best Actress and then makes Catwoman, and I mean, there's good stuff in there, of course. And her career has come back once you realize you watch I don't know what the Call, the movie where she's a 911 operator, and it's okay, that movie's dumb, but she's good in it, and then everyone just kind of gets over it. Natalie Portman wins Best Actress for Black Swan, and her first movie right after that, which she probably made before Black Swan was ever thrown into the Oscar race, is that movie's Your Highness, with the fantasy James Franco, Danny McBride, totally not funny movie that relies on gross humor, and it's very not good. But I have seen it because I am bound to watch every Natalie Portman movie.
So I guess, I think there's certain dynamics you could point to that are sort of obvious from a supply and demand side. So there aren't a lot of great roles for women. There are now. There are many more now that there are a lot more women writing and making films. But when Halle Berry wins, there's still a lot. There's still a lot of people who don't really know how to write great roles for someone like her, because there aren't a lot of people like her in that process. So it's you all of a sudden now you're all that, and you still have the same very few crumbs to choose from, and some are paying you, and there's a lot of forces that whittle the field of what you can do as a follow-up. And you could say, it's funny, I always think of Lou Gossett Jr. when he won for Officer and a Gentleman, and then his career didn't really, he had a really interesting career all building up to that, and then, Enemy Mine is after that, which he's in a mask, again, nothing against that, but I always felt like he was an actor. But it's probably the same thing. Not a lot of great roles for an actor like Lou Gossett Jr. instead of like a guy like Richard Gere coming out of that film. So you don't have to win an Oscar. There's plenty of great folks who haven't. And maybe this is a good place to shift to discussing the alternate Oscars, the Danny Peary book. Are you okay with that shift?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I turned you onto this book, Danny Peary's alternate Oscars. I don't know about you, but I picked it up. I was like, I can't believe I read through this like it was a riveting drama or a biography. I wanted to see how it worked out for the person in the end. But this was just this manual for cinematic discontent, and sort of like the feeling, even though none of these films won, seeing them listed as the best picture, it does give me this catharsis of like, oh yeah, okay. 1941, Citizen Kane did win the best picture, at least in this book. Who cares about How Green Was My Valley? That's the year I want to start with, actually. I'm going to go through a few years. I singled out a few years from this book. But before I do, just your general take on Danny Peary's tome, The Alternate Oscars, where he goes through, I should just say, and he picks the alternate Oscar for Best Picture, Best Actress, and Best Actor for each year. So
I mean, I like the book, and thank you so much for sharing it with me, because I totally love stuff like this, especially in the classic era, because like I remember the modern era, and I mean, I read books and stuff about people who were alive in the later half of the 20th century, but talking about like what should have won Best Picture, 1950 and before. It's it's hard to find a conversation like that, and I've as I mentioned, my hobby is watching every Best Picture nominee in chronological order, which is difficult now that Vulcan Video has unfortunately closed. But watching all those and then blogging about them and making my pick for what was really the Best Picture of 1935 or 32. And I watch those movies with my wife and we get to talk about it, but there's not a lot of other people to talk about those movies with. So I can, I read this book and like, oh, there's someone else is giving their thoughts on, on these early Ernst Lubitsch, Maurice Chevalier movies, which are actually like way more sexy and subversive than you think they would be for those times. So I really recommend 1 Hour with You and The Smiling Lieutenant if you want to watch a classical movie that's maybe not what you're expecting it to be.
I'll take that. 1 Hour with Me and the Smiling Lieutenant, that should be a blast. But you're talking about film titles. Sorry. Well, are there any years or I have a bunch that I could go through, but were there any ones that you particularly wanted to highlight?
So at the beginning of the Oscars, there were actually, first of all, there were 2 Best Picture categories, and they were considered to be equal to each other. Each had 3 nominees. Outstanding production, outstanding picture was Wings, World War I air flying epic. The other Best Picture winner was called Unique and Artistic Picture, and it was Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans by F.W. Murnau, which is a brilliant silent film, one of the actual greatest movies ever made. Please watch it if you can. It's a Fox movie, which means Disney owns it, which means it's probably lost in their vault by now. So if you can watch it, please do. And then they went to 5 nominees, and then to 8 nominees, and then to 10 nominees, and then 12 nominees, then down to 10, and then down to 5 for a long time, and then back up to 10, and now they're on the sliding scale. And I wish they would just pick one. But for 1936, the Best Picture winner that year was The Great Ziegfeld, which is a biopic about a Ziegfeld making his Ziegfeld Follies Theater. It stars William Powell, And the other official nominees that year were Anthony Averse, Dodsworth, Libeled Lady, Mr. Deeds Goes to Town, Romeo and Juliet, San Francisco, The Story of Louis Pasteur, A Tale of Two Cities, and Three Smart Girls. And of the nominees, I had the toughest time picking between Dodsworth, which is just a film about the final days of a marriage between Walter Houston and Ruth Chatterton, and then realizing that the marriage is over, and they get a divorce, and he ends up with Mary Astor. And the fact that this movie ends with a couple getting divorced during the production code era is like massive. Like, how did that even happen? How did they get away with a couple and like with divorce being the solution? That's crazy that was able to happen in 1936 with the production code, the very puritanical production code, which dictated what movies were allowed to be about, being sternly enforced. And Libeled Lady also stars William Powell in a comedy with Jean Harlow and Spencer Tracy, and also Myrna Loy, I think. And it's a wonderful screwball slapstick comedy. And I guess I end up going with Libeled Lady for my pick for Best Picture of that year, though one that was not nominated for Best Picture, which also Danny Peary doesn't acknowledge here, is My Man Godfrey.
I would say better than... I haven't seen all of them, but better than... To me, I like it better than Dodsworth or San Francisco or A Tale of Two Cities. But you're burying the lead. In 1936, according to Danny Peary, what is the film that should have won the Best Picture that year?
That is Modern Times by one Charles Chaplin.
Probably the right choice. That would have been the right choice, don't you think?
I'm not sure between Modern Times and My Man Godfrey.
Oh,
because
best film? Come on, it's pure cinema.
I mean, it's been a while since I've seen Modern Times. I've kind of grown to appreciate Chaplin more recently. Because for a long time, I was a more of a Buster Keaton kind of guy.
It's not mutually exclusive. You could like them both.
That is true.
And Harold Lloyd too.
That is true. That's a big obstacle to overcome when liking anything, but movies especially. You don't have to be part of a team. You can be part of more than one team.
But in this, I mean, Modern Times is. I feel like that's. I don't think I'm saying anything new. I think the one film class I was in at college, they showed this in the Modern Times for a reason. It is the most sort of classically cinematic masterpiece of his films, I think. But we don't want to get into talking about each one of these and having these debates. We just want to get into just like a general, like you were saying, a little picture of the year. So 1936, Perry says Modern Times should have beat out the Great Ziegfeld, and the Chaplin should have beat out Paul Muni, who won for The Story of Louis Pasteur. Have you gone back and watched that one recently?
I have. It's an interesting film, mainly just because of what it's about. It was one of the first non-birth-to-death biopics. It was just about this specific time in Louis Pasteur's life when he was really trying to convince people that germs were real, and if doctors washed their hands before they delivered babies, more babies would live. And that's the climax of the movie, is him trying to convince this doctor, because Louis Pasteur is a scientist, not a medical doctor, and his adult daughter is going into labor, and he has to convince this doctor to deliver the baby, but using the methods that he champions, mainly washing your hands and sterilizing the instruments before using them on the patient. And it's so it's riveting. Just get him to just boil the instruments. Just get him to boil the forceps.
See, again, it's the things that you take for granted, or the things that are left out. It gives us a picture of that time. Still, I would probably argue that Chaplin's performance, the great sort of comedic actor of his day in his greatest film, in retrospect, the film culturally sticks to the ribs a little bit more than this epic ode to the washing of hands. And just to finish this out, Jean Harlow should have won Best Actress for Libeled Lady instead of Louis Rainier for The Great Ziegfeld. So Paul Muni won for Louis Pasteur, and Louise Rainier won for The Great Ziegfeld. But I don't want to dig into these too much. I just want to go through just to give listeners a kind of a picture of what they might find if they were to go through this book. There's a few years that I feel like are pretty revealing. Like I said, 41, I think is pretty. I mean, obviously, Citizen Kane, it's like almost cliche. Of course, Citizen Kane probably should have won Best Picture the year that it was released, considering that it has been considered the greatest film of all time for so long. Maybe not at that top of that list right now, but it's always been at the top of those lists, certainly more than How Green Was My Valley. But what I find more interesting, I want to talk with you a little bit about this, is the actor and actress who he suggested. Because he really leans into celebrating the film Ball of Fire. Are you a fan of Ball of Fire?
I've never seen it.
Oh my goodness. Why are you wasting your time watching Dodsworth when you could be watching Ball of Fire?
It is in my watch list.
Oh my God.
I will watch it soon.
You're going to have so much fun. So what I love about this is that Gary Cooper won that year for Sergeant York, which is a pretty somber, patriotic, militaristic film. And Danny Peary says, no, he should have won for Ball of Fire for that year, in which he plays a sort of fuddy-duddy professor creating a dictionary of American slang with these 7 old academics who are sort of like the 7 dwarves, and Barbara Stanwyck, who Danny Peary thinks should have won the Best Actress for that year, and I totally agree. It's one of my favorite roles of hers. She is a gangster's girlfriend who has to hide out, and she is she's a treasure trove of slang. So you get Barbara Stanwyck dropping all this 1940s hipster slang on Gary Cooper, and who's falling in love with her, and these old men who are also falling in love with her, and you fall in love with her while you're watching. And I'm realizing, going through this book, that I think maybe Danny Peary is the reason that I focused on Barbara Stanwyck and got really into her as an actor, because he definitely loves her. But I was going to pepper you with questions about Ball of Fire, but you're going to have to come back for that. Now, the snub from both the Oscars and Danny Peary that year was The Maltese Falcon, which, I don't know, it's hard to say that that's not a... This is why I don't like this competition. I don't think Citizen Kane is better than The Maltese Falcon. I just think they're both so great. They're both so great. I don't even know which one's better. I mean, Humphrey Bogart isn't in Citizen Kane. That's already a knock against it.
Yeah, that's true. And this was back when there were 10 nominees a year. So, like, when you look at the lists, it's just like just a powerhouse of classic movies. And you know, if you watch classic movies a lot, you watch TCM, you realize, like, well, these are the movies they always show, and it makes it seem like, whether it's true or not, like the Academy of long ago was really in touch with what the good movies were. Also showing, like, The Maltese Falcon and Suspicion, Alfred Hitchcock's Suspicion, Sergeant York, Hold Back the Dawn, which is a film that is out of print. It's very nearly a lost film. It is so hard to track down. So if TCM ever shows Hold Back the Dawn starring Olivia de Havilland and Charles Boyer, please watch it. It's a good movie. It's one of the first movies ever written by Billy Wilder and Charles Brackett. And Charles Boyer refused to say some of the dialogue that they wrote because he thought it was too silly. And it offended Billy Wilder so much that he declared that he would only direct movies from then on, because he didn't want any of his dialogue altered by the actors.
And it's fun. You're not going to believe this, but I recently heard a podcast where they talked about this film, and it's on this list of things that I'm looking to download and been trying to find someone who has a copy. Legally, totally legally, of course, people. Don't worry about it. But yeah, Hold Back the Dawn. That's that's on my list that I need to check out. Now, moving ahead a decade. Pick between these years. I have two. We could look at 1955 or 1958. Both are pretty exciting.
Let's look at 55.
Okay, 1955. Marty won the Best Picture. It's actually a prophetic film that predicts the birth of Martin Scorsese. It's about a young man who has an illness as a child, spends his time in a bed thinking about crime, and then grows a beard and makes Robert De Niro famous. No, it is a story about Ernest Borgnine in the, it's a kind of an Oscar movie. It's a character study about a working class guy, and it's a good, lovable film. But Danny Peary suggests maybe we should have celebrated Night of the Hunter, the classic from Charles Laughton, his only film that he directed, and probably a better film than Marty. Would you agree?
I would. Marty is a film that I'm kind of underwhelmed by. Like, I guess I could get it if I look at it in the context of the time and how Ernest Borgnine is the lead, and he's out on the town with his friends trying to pick up girls, and there's this very plain girl, and that's who he gets paired with, and he's like, wow, but that's not who I should be getting with, someone hotter. And then the whole movie is he going to call her back or not? I mean, it's pretty underwhelming today, but if you just keep in mind that's 1955, and
that it's the Oscars, and they are, they're not. That year they nominated Love Is a Many Splendored Thing, Marty, Mr. Roberts, Picnic, and The Rose Tattoo. I'm a big fan of Mr. Roberts. Have you ever seen that film?
I have. Recently, I finally saw it, and I really like it.
That's some great acting in that. But the films that were left out, so not only Night of the Hunter, but Blackboard, these are the ones that Danny Peary suggested should have been the nominees. Blackboard Jungle, East of Eden, Kiss Me Deadly, Mr. Roberts, and Rebel Without a Cause.
Those are good movies.
Those are pretty good movies. And he also gave James Dean the Best Actor award that year instead of Ernest Borgnine. Again, probably between Rebel Without a Cause and East of Eden, he probably should have won the Academy Award that year. And that was before people were given the sort of Heath Ledger a posthumous, because he died, we're going to lean into celebrating him. I guess there was less of that then. In this case, they do think that Danny Peary does think the Oscars got it right with the actress of Anna Magnani in the Rose Tattoo. And have you seen The Rose Tattoo?
I have not.
Nor have I. It's a big blind spot. Anna Magnani and Burt Lancaster. And just, we didn't go into it, but 58, Peary says that Touch of Evil should have beat Gigi. And listeners will know I love this, that Alec Guinness should have been the best actor for The Horse's Mouth instead of David Niven for Separate Tables, which, of course, I 100% endorse. Let's move on to 1969. 1969 is an exciting year for the alternate Oscars. Let me know if you feel like I'm skipping over anything that you think is really important. But just
no. We've 67 was the year I wanted to talk about, and I already did. So,
yeah. And in that case, he suggested that Orson Welles should have won the Best Actor for Chimes at Midnight. 69, Best Film went to Midnight Cowboy. Not a bad film at all. But Danny Peary suggests probably should have been Once Upon a Time in the West from Ennio Morricone, from Sergio Leone, with music by Ennio Morricone. And do you agree with Danny Peary on this one? This is one where there could be some debate.
Yeah, I do. If I was limited to just the official nominees that year, I would probably go with Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Yeah.
Also a Western. But yeah, Once Upon a Time is in the West is one of those movies that I perpetually can't believe I don't own. And every time I realize it, I like wonder, well, why don't I already own this movie? I need to fix this and buy it on Amazon right now. But I'm in the middle of a podcast, so I will wait to do that.
Not only do I own it, I own a poster of it that I hope to someday display on a wall that deserves it.
Such a good movie. Like Henry Fonda gives a great evil performance.
Yeah, everything. It's a perfection of style. I think it is. That's the pinnacle of Leone. I mean, people will. And there's Once Upon a Time in America definitely has its supporters, especially the extended version. But I just can't. Nothing beats what Leone's doing in Once Upon a Time in the West. Just so good. That year, John Wayne won the Best Actor for True Grit. Danny Peary suggests Dustin Hoffman for Midnight Cowboy. Again, this is where we're getting into John Wayne was getting a Lifetime Oscar, and Dustin Hoffman was giving the performance of a lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, John Wayne getting this Oscar is definitely like a cumulative lifetime. Like, whoops, we didn't award you while you were doing your thing, so now here's an Oscar. If you were going to give John Wayne an Oscar,
Danny Peary gives it to him for The Quiet Man.
That I would say The Quiet Man or The Searchers. Those are both movies where he's really doing something and playing with his persona, right? In The Searchers, he's a bad guy. He's a villain on a quest, on like an evil quest. And what's his name? Martin. Gosh, I can't remember the actor's name. Is there to like try and make sure John Wayne doesn't kill Natalie Wood when he finds her, so he can do like the right thing. And so yes, John Wayne subverting the like hero cowboy that he solidified throughout the 40s. But then also in The Quiet Man, he's playing a much more gentler person, like someone that is an actual quiet man with like a dark past, and he just wants to get over it, but he has demons. Yeah, that's a good, like, I don't know, between The Searchers or The Quiet Man, but not for True Grit.
Not for True Grit over Dustin Hoffman in 1969. Yeah. And then this is one you can speak to. In 1969, the Best Actress who won was Maggie Smith for The Prime of Miss Jean Brodie, but Danny Peary thinks that Shirley Knight should have won for Francis Ford Coppola's The Rain People, a film that you did an episode about on the Director's Wall. So speak to that for a second. What do you think about Shirley Knight in that role?
I mean, I think she does a good job at, portraying a woman with a lot going on internally. Like, it's 1969. It's a road movie where she finds out she's pregnant, but she doesn't know if she wants to, be a housewife, raising kids in like the heteronormative like style, like Eisenhower's America, except it's 1969. And so she goes on a road trip and deals with a lot of emotion. She does, it's a very like internal performance, and she lets you in, seeing what's going on in that character's head. Of course, I haven't seen all of the other nominees, but I wouldn't argue against Shirley Knight getting it for The Rain People. It's a subtle performance. It's not the kind of performance that the Academy would acknowledge, because it's not very showy. But if you like really pay attention to it, you can dig down and see what's going on.
Yeah, probably Jane Fonda should have won for They Shoot Horses, Don't They? But who knows what was going on with the politics at that time. It was a hot time for Jane Fonda politically. Now, we're going to skip over this year, but I do feel a need to bring it up because it's something Brian and I discussed in the first episode of this podcast, which was yours and his incredibly wrong and dismissive take on Barbra Streisand in The Way We Were. Danny Peary suggests that she should have won the Best Actress that year for her role in The Way We Were, and I entirely agree. She's fantastic. You guys are so wrong. I love your podcast. That made me angry, and it's so you can if you want to answer that now. You know, I didn't take your name in vain. I'm not hostile. I didn't encourage anyone to boycott your show, and in fact, it appears I have won Brian over. He finally watched What's Up, Doc, and he's like, you know what? I think I'm into Barbra Streisand now. So maybe I can work this magic on you as well. Have you considered reconsidering Barbra Streisand in The Way We Were?
I guess I have. I have seen What's Up, Doc, and I mean, there's somewhat like Streisand in the 70s. I've also seen her version of A Star Is Born, which is one of those like, well, it's not very good, but she's good in it. And what really won me over is the DVD commentaries that she does for What's Up, Doc and A Star Is Born.
Yeah.
For What's Up, Doc, it's only like certain scenes, and it's just like her watching the movie as though she's watching it for the first time and has no idea what's happening in it. And she watches the end and says like, oh, is that what happens? Oh, that's cute. I like that. There's no way you cannot love the woman that's having that reaction to a movie watching her in it. And then she does commentary for there's a special feature on A Star Is Born of her trying on costumes, like what are the outfits she's gonna wear in the movie. One of them, I'm not joking, it is straight up Luke Skywalker's like white pajamas outfit that he's wearing at the beginning of Star Wars. Barbra Streisand is wearing that for a camera test in 1976. It is crazy. And she's like giving commentary on all the clothes. And she's like, oh, like that was from my wardrobe.
That was from Mark Hamill's floor.
Yeah. It's great. I mean, I've kind of like warmed up to Barbra Streisand, especially watching these films she did in the 70s. I only really knew her from like what pop culture has kind of turned her into in recent times, like especially South Park, which is not flattering if you're not familiar with South Park's take on Barbra Streisand. But I mean, I'm definitely more open to like watching something with Barbra Streisand in it now, you know.
Yeah. Well, I just said I needed to get that out there. I'm glad we're bringing people into the positivity zone. Yeah. I don't want to be negative about South Park, but it's funny if it wasn't happening to you or something you like, and then that's not so funny. Anyway, yeah. I'm not going to go through all these. I want to stop with 1976 because I think 1976 might be one of the best years for this book in terms of just really, really nailing it. So in 1976, the Oscar winner was Rocky by the great filmmaker Sylvester Stallone. And I don't mean that, I mean that only slightly sarcastically because he is a great filmmaker in certain ways. But I feel like winning the Oscar at that point in his career, he has not gone on to be an Oscar favorite, let us say. Right? It's the Oscars put their money on Sylvester Stallone, and then he felt like he never had to even try and win another one again. He just made movies about other things that don't usually win Oscars. So this is not, I think there's nothing particularly bad about Rocky winning that year. The other nominees were All the President's Men, Bound for Glory, Network, and Taxi Driver. And you could probably argue that at least three of those could arguably be said to be better than Rocky, a movie which I think is great. It's almost like a perfect movie, so I see why it won. But Danny Peary goes to a whole other level and says that he thinks that the best film of that year, and it's a film we're going to be covering in a future episode, is The Front by Martin Ritt, and starring Woody Allen, Zero Mostel, and it's and Michael Murphy, and many of the creators of it are people who survived the blacklist, and it's about the blacklist. So, and maybe a more important piece of cinema, but an interesting choice nonetheless. Have you seen The Front?
I have. I liked it.
I recently watched it. Does it feel like to you? Sometimes it feels to me like Seinfeld, like Larry David watched it and ripped off a lot of it for Seinfeld bits that are funny.
Yeah,
are funny, but...
yeah. I mean, sure.
You were going to say something else about The Front?
I mean, just that it's one of those movies that is. I mean, it's not as remembered today for whatever reason. I mean, probably because it's about the blacklist. It's like, hey, it's a comedy. Oh, great. I love comedies about this serious, not fun thing that totally happened, and we still feel the reverberations of throughout culture. Like, ooh, I don't know if I want to deal with that. And it goes to dark places with what happens to Zero Mostel's character.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And just like what it means to like lose, your livelihood. Like, I mean, if you're not familiar with Hollywood writers, actors, I mean, the average person would just think that like all these people are rich. So if they stop working, well, they've got their pile of money that they're sitting on, but
not really.
A lot there is such a thing as like working class actors and working class writers. And then when that just dries up, there's nowhere to go to. It really seems like, yeah, like, well, what else can I do? Their whole profession is being an artist, being an actor. Where do they go from that? And with the Zero Mostel character, especially, really feel put in that position of like, I have nowhere to go. I have like, there's no other options for me. And it's a not fun, dark place to go to. And then to have the Woody Allen character who's the front is, I'm doing like, yeah, I'll do this for money. I'll pretend that I wrote, this script is like apolitical, and then comes around to, I mean, not even because of the way the blacklist was, not even like picking up political side, but just like realizing like the right thing.
Yeah, it's just not, it's the basic human, it's not like I have to agree with the politics. The basic human decency in me will not support this, which I think is just, I see what I love about Danny Peary is I love the point he's making, because The Front is very much the same story as Rocky. It's a little guy who gets drawn into this thing and then has a knockout punch at the end that is cathartic for us. But in this case, it's about injustice and intellect and history, as opposed to the catharsis of punching a black guy in the face, which is what Rocky ultimately provides, unfortunately. Luckily, it does a lot. It's done a lot of heavy lifting to flip that script, and I feel like it's done a pretty good job of that in later iterations, and certainly Apollo Creed had some great moments, particularly in Rocky 3. So none of this is to throw any shade at Sylvester Stallone or Rocky, but to say that I like the point that Danny Peary's making here. What's one of the reasons that I love this book. But the real home run here is with the actors. So the best actors that year: Peter Finch for Network, not bad, nothing wrong with that. Faye Dunaway for Network, not bad, nothing wrong with that. But as far as iconic roles, let me give you Robert De Niro in Taxi Driver and Sissy Spacek in Carrie. Forget about it. That's an exciting Oscars. I love Network, but nobody, I mean, other than film people, really think about Peter Finch or Faye Dunaway in that film. The real star of that film is the script, but the real stars of these films are these two actors. And have you seen Taxi Driver and Carrie?
I have. Yeah, I mean, all the movies we've talked about. The Taxi Driver would probably be my best picture uh, pick for 1976, and
Fair.
uh, I mean, Sissy Spacek and Carrie, again, she's not among. Oh, she is among the official nominees. Um, yeah, I mean, it's Brian De Palma, and he's doing his split screen stuff in there, and it's got his artistic flair. But like Sissy Spacek is like the perfect casting for Carrie, and you watch it once and it's a horror movie, and then you watch it again and there's nothing like horror about it. It's just like this really sad movie about this about this teenage girl that didn't get to live the life she should have had. Um, it's great. And De Niro and Taxi Driver is both of those movies. They're iconic, and they're roles that did not win the Oscar. And I mean who they lost to were good in their own right, but De Niro's Taxi Driver and Sissy Spacek's Carrie have stuck around, which is one of the reasons why I feel like the Oscars, it's okay that they didn't pick what you wanted to win, what you thought should win.
Yeah, it's good. We get to talk about Peter Finch. No one would be talking about Peter Finch if he didn't win that Oscar, I don't think.
Yeah.
So good for him. De Niro doesn't need the Oscar for Taxi Driver. He can have half of Joaquin Phoenix's.
Yeah. He could have half of Joaquin Phoenix's performance in two movies, King of Comedy and Taxi Driver. And like they have like cultural dominance. They hung around and then be like, can you believe that De Niro didn't win Best Actor for Taxi Driver? Yeah, well, who did? Like Peter Finch for Network. Well, maybe I should watch Network, and then oh my God, it's like predicted the way television and the media is now.
Yeah, I think Network is a better movie. I like Network. It's a more favorite movie of mine than Taxi Driver or Carrie, because that's just how I'm situated. That's more the kind of movie I like. I like political satire. That's right where I want to be. That's why I think that The Front is a good choice for Best Picture that year. But I also, I bow to Taxi Driver and Carrie for what they achieved. They're massively more powerful movies as just pieces of cinema than the Network was. But I was going to say, what the real snub of 1976 was?
What's that?
Walter Matthau for Bad News Bears. That was the...
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it's... What I love about that is it's... like all the other actors are really acting, and Mathau's just Mathauing. And it's when you can just Mathau your way through something like that. That's just it's perfection. But again, I'm looking at this as a kid. At the time, I probably was rooting for Matthau. I know I was definitely rooting for Star Wars over Annie Hall the next year. That's for sure. Really, it didn't. At the time, I was not. It took a while for Woody Allen to win me back. He did eventually, but yeah, that was a rough year. Towering Inferno loses, Star Wars loses, Matthau loses. This Academy Award sucks, man. Oh no, it's great. The world is wrong about the Academy Awards. They're great. No, the world is wrong about the Academy Awards. They're terrible. You know what? It just doesn't matter. We've had fun talking about it, though, right?
Oh yeah, I love talking about the Oscars, award season, out of award season, and I mean the Oscars. One of the positive things I had on here is that they spark conversation. You think the nominees are good, you think they're bad, they spark conversation, and we can talk about then why these movies are the right grouping or why they're the wrong grouping. and then you'll bring up movies I haven't seen. I've got to check those out, and it's great. It's just this wonderful celebration of movies, and I thought I saw all the movies that I needed to see for a year, and here's a list of others, and I watched some of them, and I'm like, nope, those are not good. Why are those in this list? I watch others, and like, hey, those are really good, and I never would have seen those if I hadn't have felt like I had to.
So,
do you call yourself a music fan? Are you the one making the playlist for all the parties? Then you gotta listen to the Pinch Music Podcast, where we interview musicians, engineers, producers, and music lovers of all types. We even put together playlists for any and all occasions. So if you want to have the Beatles versus Stones debate, pick up some engineering tips, or just discover a new artist, you gotta check out the Pinch Music Podcast, all a part of the Paper House Network.
Andras here. When I'm not co-hosting The World is Wrong podcast, I'm hosting and producing the Radio 8 Ball podcast, where we answer questions by picking songs at random, like picking musical tarot cards. We've hosted musical divinations for people like John C. Reilly, Patricia Arquette, Tig Notaro, and Fred Armisen, and hosted over 200 songwriters, providing the randomly chosen answers from Inara George and Dan Byrne to Mose Allison and Alan Toussaint. That's Radio 8 Ball, all one word. You can find us wherever you get your podcasts and download our app from the iTunes App Store. Switching gears to the Oscars. That's what's coming up next week. Next week, the Oscars will have happened. The actual Oscars. I don't know if we really need to go into this year's... Everyone else is talking about this year's stuff. Let's talk about the Oscars. Coming up next week, we're going to be doing our Oscars ceremony, where we nominate our No Awards winners. And are you pulling together your list there, AJ?
I'm gathering my list together. There's still a few movies I got to see, but I am working on it.
It's going to be pretty free form. We're letting everyone sort of determine their own parameters. We're just trying to, this is the first one, so we don't want to be too rigid. We want to let people who are contributing to this, help us figure out what we want to focus on. So you're going to be able to pick from TV and movies. You could give lists. You could say, these are the best films of the year. And there could be 3, and they're all equally the best. Like anything you can do, there is no, you get to color outside of the lines entirely. So I'm really looking forward to seeing which ones you pick. And you mentioned that there are some actual Oscar nominees that pulled films off of your list of nominees. I'm just going to keep trying to play with these words until I get the right terms down. But maybe our Oscars nominees. Anyway, what did the Oscars ruin for you with this?
So one of my favorite performances of the whole year, and who I would have given Best Supporting Actress to, is Mia Goth in Emma, playing Harriet. Emma did... It seemed like because of, pandemic times and big movies getting pushed, like, well, maybe these movies that got released earlier in the year will stick around. And then it seemed like they didn't. But then, of course, because Emma's a period piece, it gets a costume nomination, which I don't know if it'll win. I haven't seen... Apparently there's a new Pinocchio that I might have to watch. I don't know. And I also haven't seen the new Mulan, which I imagine would have good costumes in it. And Mank and Ma Rainey's Black Bottom have, I imagine, the old suits that people wore, because I've seen both of those movies, and they have old suits that people wore back in the day. And Emma, of course, has pretty...
The shoes. Ma Rainey's Black Bottom, those shoes are very important.
Yeah. When I saw that Emma got this costume nomination. I'm like, oh well, now I can't nominate. I can't hold up Mia Goth as best supporting actress, or maybe even just as best plain performer for Harriet and Emma, who's...
This is the extent of it. You're singing as many praises as you're going to be able to on this show right now.
Yeah. If you're unfamiliar with Emma and with the character of Harriet, she's the Brittany Murphy character in Clueless. Toni Collette played Harriet in the 96 Emma. The girl that Emma thinks is clueless and she will make over, and then ends up becoming like more like looked upon, doted upon than Emma thought. And she does a very good job at playing like a meek, shy girl, and then kind of coming out of that and having too much confidence for Emma to deal with, but still being very likable the whole time. And you just want things to work out for her. And, it'll be no surprise. They do. And, I mean, you're happy when it does, so that's not a spoiler. And this version of Emma period, that is the official title. There's a period at the end of Emma. It's like very like millennial Emma, just in like the style of the performances. Like they're still speaking in like the Regency era period. It's not anachronistic, but there's just something about the style of the performances that feels very modern, and all the actors are a bit younger than they have been portrayed previously. Anya Taylor-Joy plays Emma, and she's great as Emma, and it's I recommend the whole movie. Does she play chess in it?
Because that's all. I only want to see her play chess.
I don't think she does, but she exchanges.
Look, if I see a Pele movie, I'm going to expect some soccer. I see a Bruce Lee movie, I want to see some karate, and when I see Queen's Gambit, I want some Queen's Gambiting.
Yeah, there's no chess, there's no demonic goats in this movie, unfortunately.
Okay, fine. I'll check it out. We'll all check it out, but we will not be voting for it for an Oscar because it's not eligible. If you get nominated for an Oscar, you are not eligible for a Noscar. And if you are nominated or awarded a Razzie, your inner circle for the Oscars. Are there any Razzies you want to celebrate?
I haven't even looked at the Razzie nominees for this year.
Are you as much of a fan as Brian and I are of the Wrong Missy?
No.
It's very good. Very good film. Glenn Close has the honor of being nominated for an Oscar and a Razzie for Hillbilly Elegy. Have you seen Hillbilly Elegy?
I have not. That's one...
You're a big Ron Howard fan.
I mean, I do like Rush.
I'm telling you,
and Apollo 13.
I'm Ron-splaining to you. And of course you know that you are a Ron Howard fan. I'm just rubbing it in because Hillbilly Elegy is probably even testing your patience as a fan.
Yeah, it really is. I personally would love it for selfish reasons if Glenn Close once again lost an Oscar to Olivia Colman. I just think that would be great.
Why?
I mean, again,
because it hurts them both. Because Olivia Olivia Colman will just be mortified again, and Glenn Close will have to pretend to be magnanimous and smiling again when you know that all she wants to do is kill her bunny.
Well, my favorite image, like the image of that year's when they announced the winner. It's the actress from Roma, Yalitza. I can't remember her full name. I'm sorry. She's just smiling politely at the camera. Lady Gaga has her mouth agape and looking up, like she's looking at the teleprompter, going like, huh? And Olivia Colman has her hands over her mouth, like, oh my God, I can't believe this. And Melissa McCarthy is making a face that can only say, oh. And then Glenn Close at the end is making like the Jim face from The Office, just like kind of like biting her lip, head askew, looking like, I can't believe this at the camera. It's like, that's the best actress race for that year. And it's great. And I mean, I had nothing against Glenn Close. You know, great actress. She's been nominated 8 times. It's just one of these things, like the Academy has just been messing around with her for so long. Eventually she's going to boil a bunny called Hillbilly Elegy, and they're going to give it to her, when, you know, there were other performances where they could have given it to her, and there may be some later on, but at this point they, you know, best not risk it. Let's just give it to her now for Hillbilly Elegy. And yeah, I haven't seen the movie yet. I was not interested in the book. Found out there's going to be a movie, not interested. It's got awards buzz, not interested. Reviews come out, it's terrible. Okay, now I'm really not interested. And now it has an Oscar nomination for Glenn Close. And it's on Netflix, so it's like right there. Like, well, maybe.
Come on, he's your man, Ron Howard.
Yeah.
You tried to
Maybe
make me do
once-
an episode on Far and Away. Now you have to show up for your buddy.
I mean, but Far and Away is a good movie.
Let's not go there. Okay. But let's say something more positive, which is On the Way Out. Glenn Close, favorite performance.
Oh, let's see.
It doesn't have to be the number one. It's just a favorite performance. One that you feel like, oh, people, when I think of her, I think, that was amazing.
So, I mean, okay, like it's a great career here. I have to go with, now I'm like scrolling through her IMDb page, like there's too many. I guess, okay, so this isn't the obvious pick, but it's not a slam on her at all, of course, but she plays the First Lady in Mars Attacks.
Okay.
I mean, so like broad, right? And over the top, and I mean, just matches everything that movie needs. And then she, after that, then plays the female vice president in Air Force One. So then, you know, she follows up playing this over the top First Lady, then with a very like serious like female vice president in Air Force One, which I think is great.
Wow. I'm kind of surprised that you're AJ snubbing her for her lead role in one of Ron Howard's good pictures, The Paper.
The Paper, right.
She's really good in that. That's like a real, like, to me, that's one of the times where she gets to play someone who's not sort of, I don't know, some sort of secretly hideous, nefarious, secretly dangerous person. I mean, it's one of the things that's great about her, but I like that. That's like a sort of a classic lead role. But my favorite Glenn Close performance is hands down her role as Patty Hughes in the TV series Damages. I think that's one of the greatest series ever. And she is giving a performance, like the most Glenn Close performance ever. And, you know, just getting to work with William Hurt and Martin Short and Rose Byrne. She is the other main lead, but mostly it's the character actors who do a season arc on it. Such a great series, but she just towers over them. As it's like if Jack Nicholson did a series, like everyone would be doing their scenes, coming in knowing, okay, I'm going up against the heavyweight. And In this case, it's the heavyweight is Glenn Close. It's yeah. Have you ever seen that? Have you ever seen that series?
No, it's one I forgot about, but I remember it now. Yeah, that show had a lot more star power to it than I remember.
Wonderful, wonderful series. But we can't do a short episode about anything, AJ. You and I
Apparently
really
not.
love to talk about films, and we don't know how to edit ourselves, so this is what we get. So I am looking forward to having you on the Oscars episode, and listeners will get to hear us talk again in a future episode about Vanilla Sky and if you can imagine that this was our take on the Oscars, we actually talked longer about that one movie than we've talked about the whole history of the Oscars. So get ready, folks. It's amazing. But people can find you when you're not showing up as a guest host on this podcast on the Director's Wall that you co-host with our usual co-host, Brian Connolly. And we've talked about that a lot. You've mentioned on this episode that you also have a blog. Tell us a little bit about that.
I keep a blog. I started it way long ago when Blogger or Blogspot was, something that you did, and it still works. So I still use it. It's called cinemathenandnow.blogspot.com, where I and my wife, Lonnie Gonzalez, will post about movies recent movies we've seen and classic movies we've seen, and excuse me, and I will, since I'm such a big Oscars fan and my hobby is to watch all of the classic era Best Picture nominees, I'll review those as I watch them. It's been a while, but I do post some for Oscar season as well as my reviews for the current year's Oscars. So I will have most of those up, or I will have them all up by the time you hear this. And I am also on Letterboxd at AJGO85. I'm pretty active on there. I'm less active on Twitter under the same thing. I just look at other people's tweets. It's Twitter's, is Twitter. You don't want to hang out there for too long.
Or you become a twit.
Exactly.
Cool. Well, we always provide the links to the Director's Wall, so we don't need to go into that too much. I'm curious, I hope you start adding Danny Peary's alternate Oscars into your Oscar research. I think might broaden the field a little bit. I look forward to hearing what you think about Ball of Fire. My particular ball of fire is the Radio 8 Ball, a podcast that I host where we answer questions by picking songs at random and interpreting them like musical tarot cards. I haven't been putting them out as often as I usually do, but there are 666 of them, so I'm pretty sure that anyone listening to this can certainly find some that you haven't listened to yet. Dig into them. They're great. We have some great guests, some of them famous, some of them not. I guess not so happy, but a shout out to the great drummer Don Heffington. You'll be hearing this many weeks in the future, but he passed away this week, and fans of Radio 8 Ball will know him as being a guest on the Radio 8 Ball show a couple of years ago. A really great episode. He's also, fans of just music will know him as someone who played drums with the band Lone Justice, as a session guy with Bob Dylan, with Tom Waits, with Lowell George, with so many people. And so that's, we always like to give a little shout out to the Radio 8 Ball, so check it out. You can find it at radio8ball.com. And if you want to reach out to us here, please do so at contact@theworldiswrongpodcast.com. You can find us on Instagram at theworldiswrongpodcast. And, well, start thinking about the films that you would nominate for an Oscar. And if you want to send those in, if you send them in this week, between now and next week, maybe we'll even be able to give a shout out to some of them. So get us your Oscar nominees. They have to be films or film artists. Well, basically, the work has to be in a film that was not nominated for an Oscar in any way. And if it was nominated or awarded a Razzie, give it a little extra love. thanks a lot, AJ, for doing this. I hope we get to do it again.
Thanks for having me.
And any last words you want to send off to our audience?
Just, if you haven't been into the Oscars before, I mean, just, keep in mind, just tune in and remember that, the good movies always rise to the top in the end. And I think, I think you'll have fun. And who knows, someone will mispronounce someone's name, or the wrong person will stand up at the wrong time, or Tom Hanks will demand that the lights be turned back on so someone can finish their speech. There's lots of little great moments in the Oscars, and you can never know when they're going to happen. So, just tune in, and hopefully they happen when you're watching.
And remember, wherever you are, folks, whether you're on the Oscars or not on the Oscars, whether you're nominated or you're not nominated, whether you won, whether you lost, doesn't matter. Wherever you are, the world is wrong, and it's probably wrong about you.
If you had the Academy Awards night to do over again, would you do any of that differently?
Well, I don't think so, no. I felt that that there was an opportunity for, since the American Indian hasn't been able to hear his voice heard, or have his voice heard, anywhere in the history of the United States, I felt that it was a marvelous opportunity for an Indian to be able to voice his opinion to 85 million people. I guess that was the number. And I felt that he had a right to, in view of what Hollywood has done to him. And I was embarrassed for Shashin. She wasn't able to say what she intended to say. And I was distressed that people should have booed and whistled and stomped, even though perhaps it was directed at myself. They should have at least had the courtesy to listen to her. But I think she did very well, and I was very glad that she did have what opportunity she had to say what she did. And
why didn't you get to read your entire statement as you planned it?
Well, I think that they felt that it was inappropriate, and I actually don't know. I think they didn't want her there. They didn't want the evening interrupted with that particular note. And from their insular point of view, I felt that perhaps they had a point. But I don't think that people generally realize what the motion picture industry has done to the American Indian. As a matter of fact, all ethnic groups, all minorities, all non-whites. And people just simply don't realize. They just took it for granted that that's the way people are going to be presented, and these cliches were just going to be perpetuated. And so when someone makes a protest of some kind and says, no, please don't present the Chinese this way, or please, I mean, on this network every night, well, perhaps not every night, but you can see silly renditions of human behavior. The leering Filipino houseboy, the wily Japanese, or the kook or the gook, and the idiot black man, and the stupid Indian, and it just goes on and on and on. And people actually don't realize how deeply these people are injured by seeing themselves represented, not so much the adults because they're already inured to that kind of pain and pressure, But children, Indian children, seeing Indians represented as savage, as ugly, as nasty, vicious, treacherous, drunken. They grow up only with a negative image of themselves, and it lasts a lifetime. Is that an answer to your question?
Yeah. Did you expect the kind of outrage that you got from people? I believe, that very night, Raquel Welch made a joke against you, saying that I hope the next person doesn't have a cause. Who's the Western star who followed later? Steve McQueen. Clint Eastwood, yes, of course. I very seldom make mistakes. He did his version of a joke, and then John Wayne looked like he was about ready to get a posse together. He looked so sore. Did that surprise you, that they would be angered that you desecrated their cathedral?
I wasn't surprised, no. There were a number of people that felt that Sachin had not been welcomed and not been treated properly, and people that were sympathetic to what she was trying to say. And I received an awful lot of mail in support of that.
The booing made me sore.
Well, actually, I think the people were booing at me. They were booing because they thought, well, this moment is sacrosanct, and you're ruining our fantasy with the intrusion of a little reality. And I suppose it was perhaps unkind of me to do that, but there was a larger issue, and it's an issue that nobody in the motion picture industry has ever addressed themselves to, unless forced to. I mean, the blacks have brought about changes because they were just damn angry about it. And they thumped the tub and threatened and made some noise about it. But if they had just been silent and thought, well, gradually wisdom will come to those who are in the business of the movies, and they will do right by us, and the day would never have come. We, have a lot to be grateful for, that the blacks were as insistent as they were that the image of blacks were changing. But it's a block by block fight. It's people are very timorous now about showing blacks in an unkindly light. But they would go on with the Filipino houseboy or the Indian. I mean, you see it every day on television. Not every day.
There's a World War II movie in which, actually it's John Wayne again, I don't mean to pick on him, in which he refers to Mr. Tojo's little yellow-bellied rats. And there was so much racism in World War II movies. You see, it's really, really surprising. I mean, it was so crude that it's worse than you remember it. The thing that bugged me, too, was that people said, there's Brando jumping on a social cause bandwagon now, getting in on the Indians, forgetting that in the 50s you were, I think, one of the first people fishing with the Puyallup Indians up on the West Coast. You must forgive me. We must take a message, and we'll be right back. Stay where you are.